Okay, let me just get a thing, is it the agenda over here?
Yeah.
Okay. Call the meeting of the ordinance committee of July 16th to order. Okay, dismissed with formalities. Do we have to do the pledge or anything like that? No. Number 2, ordinance 24-07. Ordinance amending the Pittsfield Town Code, Chapter 13 zoning ordinance, Table P, residential and rural district use and dimensional standards to add commercial low density as a conditional use for the R2, R3, R4, and C4 districts. Period.
Doc, I can give some background on this a little bit. This is an item really that has been discussed by the planning board for quite some time now. I'd say probably well over a year. Originally, what sparked this discussion was there's a property on, I believe it's Stinson Street, I think is what that is considered. It's almost across the street from Hancock Lumber. As you're going into the industrial park, who was wanting to operate a gymnasium, a small, I think, 2,500 or 3,000 square feet is what it comes down to, gymnasium out of his garage. And there was quite a holdup from the planning board as to what direction to move in order, if that were to happen, what direction to go in order for that to happen. There was talks about changing the zoning in that area, talks about a contract zone, and nothing ever really ended up happening with it because the property owner felt as though he was never necessarily given clear direction as to what direction was the best pathway to move forward.
What was the issue? That it was in the garage, not in his house?
That it was not an allowable use in that district. Or
Okay,
in
so it was
that
a
zone.
district residential.
It's classified, even though you've got probably the loudest commercial entity in town directly across the street from it, that side of the road is classified as residential. And so that's where really the hang-up has come from. And so it resurfaced shortly after I got hired. And Russell and the former code enforcement officer had been working with KB Cog as to what might be the best direction in order to get this done if the planning board were to approve it. And this was what KB Cog had kind of had come up with, was to classify a commercial low intensity use as a conditional use in the R2, R3, R4, and the C4 districts, which is defined as uses intended to provide for services needed by a neighborhood population characterized by low volumes of traffic and noise. Properties with this designation would generally be less than 1 acre in size, and activities would include but are not limited to the sale of services, goods, products, wares, or merchandise directly to the consumer in certain limited offices of a small local nature. And the gym is certainly not the only property that's kind of approached us along this sort of scenario. There's also an individual who was potentially wanting to operate a flower shop on one of the streets quite near here, actually, on I'm not sure what street this is that runs
Interesting.
down
Yes,
where the
sir.
Chinese food is, but that street right there. You know, certainly commercial all around it. It's just, I think, 2 lots away from commercial, but technically the zoning right now would classify that as residential. And so what this would do is it would require individuals who wanted to obtain this commercial low intensity use. They would be required to fill out a conditional use application, which is basically just 4 questions. And they would be required to complete a full site plan review, just like our other projects do. And it would still require planning board approval. So this is certainly not a blanket approval for any sort of commercial project that might want to, or commercial, you know, enterprise that might want to go into what might be considered a residential area. The planning board would still, you know, would still review the project for buffering and for traffic control and for noise. But it affords the planning board, a little bit more flexibility in considering these sorts of projects on a case-by-case basis. You know, it's not to say that they're gonna allow a 20,000 square foot gym to go in the center of a residential area. That's not what this intent is. And so that's kind of some background, as to, you know, where this has come from. I will say that this amendment's already gone through the planning board. They've held a public hearing. They've passed it unanimously on their end. That's why it has come before you. So that's where we're at.
So one question is, you know, he more or less answered it. So if somebody has a proposal to use their property, you know, whether it be, you know, within a building or establishing a building or putting it would have to be arranged, have to be set up and questioned with respect to what it is, noise, boundaries, etc.
Right.
You know, like I got an empty lot in the back of my house, so it would be questionable if I wanted to put up a firing range in that area.
Right, absolutely.
So,
Yeah, like I said, there's still gonna be a full site plan review, which is a very, you know, that's a pretty rigorous process in itself. That asks about those things, certain noise levels and what your traffic count's gonna be like and what sort of landscaping there's gonna be. All of those types of things would be included in that review.
let me ask you, with respect to an issue that came up a couple of meetings ago, vis-a-vis Heartland Avenue. You know, what, you know, I mean, what is the person putting up? Does it comply? You know, what is intended use, etc. You know, I mean, has he passed on that, or is that still pending? That issue still pending?
That issue is, the town has just received a survey from the neighbor that has shown that the structure that has been built does not adhere to the 20-foot setback that is required. And so the town will be pursuing enforcement action against that individual to correct that matter and bring it into compliance.
Okay. All right. Any comments from the audience?
Yes. How's we doing today? But I should say put my name first, I'm sorry.
Any questions, Eric?
I don't think so. I mean, I think this affords people the opportunity to
Yeah,
be able to do something, give the planning board at least the opportunity to say yes or no.
yeah,
And without this, it seems like you're limiting
Absolutely.
what people can do with their property, especially if it doesn't intrude on other people's. I'm with Doc, like I don't wanna bought a redemption next to my house or anything like that, but some of the stuff that's.
Yeah, I mean, what we've been approached about, like an accountant, a tax accountant that wants to have, you know, do taxes, say in her garage, top of her garage, something like that, for example. These are not businesses that are generating, you know, extravagant amounts of traffic in and out of their businesses. You know, a flower shop generally, maybe once or twice a year is gonna generate a decent amount of traffic. But for the most part, for most of the year, there's gonna be maybe one or two cars in and out of there. It's not gonna be anything extravagant. So again, you know, low intensity really is the key word here. That we're not trying to open a Walmart in the middle of, you know, some residential area in town.
So if there was a business right now in a residential area of someone operating out of their house, it's out of compliance.
Not necessarily, if it's within the house, they can have, like a home-based enterprise. Those are permits that we issue, but the issue that we come up with is structures that are not the principal dwelling unit, garages, sheds, you wanna call it that, those are where we're not able to issue, you know, those home-based occupations or home-based permits.
And is that something that comes before the council, or is that something that's just local, you guys approve it, sign the permit and?
Home base is all through the code enforcement.
Okay.
Yeah.
Good, good. That's all I got, questions? Makes sense?
In favor? Opposed? Nobody? Okay, where to go? Adjourned.